up, my dudes, dudettes, and all those who supersede and are in between? My name is Legend of Anakin. As you know, I'm your friendly neighborhood gremlin and monster lover. What is happening? Happy Friday if you're listening on Friday, and if you're not, happy new week. This podcast, I know. Welcome to the second episode. Welcome to the second episode of the Idle Screen podcast. As you can hear, my voice is a little gone, and this episode of the podcast is a little bit late compared to like how I normally would like to have it. But that is because I have made the impulse executive decision to do all spooky themed things. I know I said this is going to be a guest episode, but we're going to do another little short one and just have it. I'm still getting into the swing of the ums and the ums, and I have a couple of ideas that I would love to touch on for spooky season. The next few episodes are going to get a little bit longer, but this one's going to be a tiny bit shorter. And then, as I was saying, you can hear in my voice, I'm losing it just a little bit because I am working and trying to do this and streaming and blah, 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 blah. But I have a very exciting thing, and I wanted to lead into it. The next few episodes, I won't tell you what they're about, but they are going to be, Halloween themed, adjacent, or whatever. And if you're watching this, I do have a little bit. My hair isn't the orange that I was going to plan to do. There's orange in it, but my red actually didn't fade like I thought it would, which is a good problem. A good problem to have because normally red fades pretty quickly for those of us who have manic-induced hair dyeing states or hair coloring states. We know this, but normally red fades really quick, so I thought I'd be orange by Halloween, and I am not, luckily, but it is red, and I do really like it. For those who can see me, I am a little bit to the theme today, and I hope that you enjoy that. This will probably not be up the same day that people who are listening to it, but the first episode so far, a lot of people give me feedback, and I'm really excited about it. I really, I don't know, I didn't expect so many people to actually give me feedback on audio quality and things I was talking about and things they're excited about, and I'm really excited that so many people enjoyed themselves listening, and it makes me even more excited that now it's October and this episode is up for October, and there's gonna be 5 episodes in October because there's 5 Fridays and Saturdays in October, and that's just really exciting because I base my entire personality off of this month, and that's it. But yeah, so today I have a 3x3, which is just for those, and I'll put it up on the screen for those who are watching, but for those who don't know, 3x3 is just a little 9 tile square where you can put whatever you want. I also have some tier lists that I've been working on and things like that, but I don't know if I want to do a tier list for Halloween related things because I'm just really finicky with Halloween movies and Halloween decorations. But if you're interested in that, maybe we'll make a tier list of, or maybe it exists already, but we could do a tier list of Halloween. Also, I'm sorry if you hear Kylo. I'll probably edit it out, but I don't know why he's crying. He normally doesn't cry, but sorry if you can hear him. But yeah, so maybe we can do a Halloween tier list of best cheesy decorations or something like that. I think that'd be cute and fun and quirky and cool. And I know it's probably awkward because there's pauses, but I'm trying to work on not saying so maybe I will edit the pauses out, but for this week probably not, so bear with me on that. At least it's a short episode. I hope that however you're listening, it just adds a little oomph to your day. That's what I would like to put out into the world. Anyways, so I'm looking at my phone because I have a little 3x3, and that way I can just easily flow right into it. But I'm going to walk through what is on my 3x3 of top horror movies and horror movies / horror franchises, because I did put certain things on here that I like for different reasons. Also, it's probably less clickety clackety if you're just listening because I have been very stressed and I took my nails off and I cut them a lot. I'm having an identity crisis over it. But maybe it's easier for you to listen to not hearing the clickety clackety of me talking, but it's hard for me looking at myself with little baby fingers and not my long witchy nails. Anyways, they'll be back on Sunday. Anyways, so do we have on my 3x3 Nightmare on Elm Street, Evil Dead, 28 Days Later, Candyman, Carrie, Child's Play, Dread, Get Out, and The Exorcist. Now, when I was showing this 3x3 to a couple of other people, like in real life, just to make conversation, immediately they're like, "Oh, well, do you mean the original Child's Play? Do you mean Child's Play 2? Do you mean the original Carrie? Do you mean the original Evil Dead? Which Nightmare on Elm Street do you mean? Did you see the new Candyman? What the fuck is Dread? Da da da. Right. So The Exorcist. They've touched on The Exorcist similarly, but obviously when you say The Exorcist, most horror fans are going to think of the original Exorcist. So obviously I put that one on there. I don't know what it is about The Exorcist, but learning the creation of that film really was interesting to me and something that got me super into effects makeup. And anybody that knows me knows I love Halloween so much because I get to help people either do their effects makeup or I get to teach them about their effects makeup. I went to beauty school for a brief stint for just so I could learn a little bit better about regular makeup, but I love effects makeup the most. I love gore. I did think originally when I made this, now looking back at it, I made it like 2 weeks ago. I didn't include Saw on there. And that's interesting because Saw is one of my favorite franchises. But I don't really constitute Saw as horror, especially if you get into anything past 3. Saw is a little bit more of a thriller to me. And I hadn't seen Spiral. I think that's why I didn't put it on there. Because if I'm going to be encompassing all of the franchises, I just didn't feel like it would do justice. But if you talk to me about horror and things, you probably know that I would put Saw on there just because that's one of my top franchises in terms of things that really like skeeve me out. Similarly to the Blair Witch Project and The Woods, or like, I don't know if the official name was The Woods or if it was the Blair Witch 2. I know they did a Blair Witch 2, but for those who don't know, the Blair Witch Project was like a big deal in terms of like no other found footage thing had existed up until this point, but or like movie, and the way they promoted it was entirely separate from what the movie actually was. It was a pretty big deal at the time, and then for the sequel, they did something quite similar, and I fell for it because I was like, oh, The Woods, it's just gonna be like another horror movie, da 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 da. I saw it, and I can tell you exactly why, and we'll get into this in a later episode, but the Blair Witch Project is one of the only horror movies to actually scare me and leave me feeling stressed after the fact. Come to think of it, if I watch back a lot of horror movies that have suspense aspects, like good horror will have suspense aspects to them without having jump scares. Maybe like 1 or 2, but like, you know what I mean. So I was actually talking about that on stream where I said, I mentioned horror, and somebody was like, well, I can do horror, but I can't do jump scares. And I'm like, yeah, but like good horror doesn't have jump scares in it. Also, today I won't be drinking my protein shake while we are doing this, but I do have my jug. I hope that you guys are hydrated. If you guys are watching, I have a gallon water bottle, which my mom ended up giving to me. She left it at my house, and then I was like, Mom, I really like this water bottle. She gave it to me. I'm talking really fast. I just got done a workout. So I think I'm going a little bit quicker than I was going the first episode, where I was kind of, after Renaissance Fair, I was a little more chill, I was a little more excited, but now I have a game plan, so I'm like a little more eager to get into it. Moving forward, I do think I'll calm down a little bit. These are going to be better planned out to record. I just want to make sure I stay on my own schedule, or else I won't. But yeah, I have my water. So there might be pauses just because, I'm trying to not lose my voice completely, but I am going to be losing it just a little bit. But yeah, anyways, so Blair Witch actually scares me because it is one of the only horror movies where you don't really see what you're up against. And part of why I enjoy, like, I will get into this in a later episode, but that stress from not seeing what you're scared of really, really, really gets to me, and it leaves me feeling tense after the fact. I actually, when I saw not Into the Woods, that's a musical. when I saw Blair Witch 2, I didn't know what it was until it was already too late, and we left the theater. Mind you, I saw it in Manhattan. We left the theater, and I had to stay over the person's house, like the person that I saw the movie with. I stayed over their house because I was too scared to go home. So that's the thing that you know about me. I know one of my best friends is scared of The Grudge, specifically like the noise that she makes in The Grudge, and sometimes I forget. And like, when you're like being annoying and you end up going like, "Rah," like he hates that. And we like pick fun at it, but that is me with the Blair Witch, but obviously people can't recreate the Blair Witch. You know what I mean in real life. So anyways, that's why Saw and Blair Witch aren't on there, but if you talk to me in person or if you comment or message me or something like that, you can. If you go to the Anchor link for this podcast, or if you look up like anchor.fm/idle screen podcast, you can also leave voice messages for the show. And I would love if for spooky season, since we have all these extra weeks and I'm going to be not doing the guest episodes just yet, I would love if you're listening and feel like it, if you could send voice messages about like what your favorite horror movies are, like your top 3 or something, or why you like horror, or what scares you or something like that. Anything really. I'll probably put straight up questions in the dibbly-do, the description, the podcast notes, or whatever you call them. I'll probably do that. But I would really, really love if you just comment or if you leave a voice message. I would really like the voice message. I think it's a really cool feature, and I would like to include it onto the show. Anyways, so my 3x3 has those movies on it, and here, like, I would like, first of all, I want to talk about 28 Days. So, I only put 28 Days on this list because, technically speaking, 28 Weeks is my favorite. But 28 Weeks, I really think is my favorite, mostly because of the score. And I don't entirely know why the score relies so heavily, like, why I like the score so much. But it is by John Murphy, and it is just really, really good. If you know in the House in a Heartbeat, that's from 28 Weeks Later. They reused it in Kick-Ass. They like redid it a little bit, but it was used in Kick-Ass again, which is just a fun little fact. But I really, really love that movie score, and I wanted to include 28 Weeks because 28 Weeks, every zombie film kind of or 28 Days, every zombie film kind of explains it, but I think 28 Days, like the way it was just done was really good. And I don't even remember when I first saw it. It was like one of those things I think I was just born with the knowledge of, and I was just obsessed. Like, I was obsessed with zombies, and when 28 Weeks came out, it was like at the prime of my zombie obsession, and 28 Days I had already seen, so then of course I rewatched it because I was like, you guys need to see 28 Weeks, but let's watch 28 Days first, even though you could see them separate. But I did just want to include, the, like, I like both of them. I know we were supposed to get a sequel, and rumors are always, or another one, rumors are always that we will have another one, but I think that they ended it on a good note. What I love to see is a very rare instance where I would love to see a third movie. I would love to see what happens after they go on that helicopter at the end of 28 Weeks. But 28 Days, just the zombies, the way they handled everything, the actual suspense, the cinematography, really, really good in 28 Days. And I just really, really, really like zombies. And I wanted to include a zombie movie on there without being like, oh, Night of the Living Dead, da-da-da-da. And keep in mind, I will probably, maybe, nudge, nudge, do an episode on, like, movie suggestions and things that people should watch around Halloween time. Or just if you like horror in general, but obviously we all have an excuse to kind of go a little fucking OD in Halloween season. But maybe I will do an episode on that if you guys want, and we will cover, like, these are not things that I necessarily suggest for everyone. 28 Days is pretty tame in comparison to some other zombie films, but I don't suggest all of these movies to everyone. These are just my personal favorites. Evil Dead, again, it's something I love the entire franchise. I did put the original on 3x3, but the whole franchise, yes, that includes the remake / sequels / whatever they want to call it. I love the remake. I really like that they stuck, again, this is similar to why I like Saw. They did practical effects for the original and they did practical effects for the one that came later on. I forget what year the newer one came out, but the newer one, I want to say 2013. It might be 2014, but I'm pretty sure it was 2013. But they used practical effects for that, including scenes where like people's arms were cut off and really graphic. You know, the most graphic scene in the very beginning with the vine slash tree and the girl in the woods, those were practical effects, and obviously it's not very hard to do, but it is very visceral, and I just really like that. And obviously Evil Dead later turns into an entirely different franchise, still super phenomenal, but a little more campy and funny, as opposed to the original one and the remake of the original or sequel. I still don't really know how to address that, but the Evil Dead series is one that's like near and dear to my heart. Again, I saw it at the peak of when I was getting really, 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 really into horror, so I just really have a soft spot for it. Nightmare on Elm Street, similarly, a lot of these I'm feeling like are franchises, and we'll get to Child's Play too, but a lot of these are franchises that I just love, and I just came out the womb knowing about them somehow. I believe Nightmare on Elm Street was not my mom's favorite. My mom's not particular to horror, but I can tell you it's one of the only horror movies my mom won't turn off if it's on. And I can vividly remember seeing, I think it was the second Nightmare on Elm Street, and they were airing it on Channel 17. We didn't have cable when I was growing up, so they were airing it on Channel 17 around Halloween time, and I didn't see the whole thing. I was like very young. I might have been like 6 or 7, and they were playing it, but I watched it and I just thought the imagery was really cool. And obviously, when there's like a nursery rhyme in it, it gets stuck in your head. And at the time, Nightmare on Elm Street was one of the first movies to really do that and have a reoccurring like main villain, which I just think was really cool. Maybe not one of the first, but it was one of the bigger ones where you knew who he was and everybody knew who he was, and there was this nursery rhyme that went with it, and the concept was pretty cool and it stresses people out. I think a lot of us, if we have nightmares and things like that, I think what makes a good horror franchise, it's something that's like a tangible fear that people can relate to. And you're like, oh, well, what would happen if I was in this situation? And that's kind of what drags me into movies like that. But again, really cool imagery. So obviously, I'm a little bit partial. Child's Play, since I'm still on entire franchises and I've covered, half of the list. Child's Play, if you know me, when most of the time when people ask what is a movie that got me into horror, I say one of two things. I either say Carrie, which is also on this list, or I say Child's Play 2, specifically. Pretty sure whenever I saw Child's Play 2, I should have not been watching it. I know that for a fact, but I saw Tiffany and I was absolutely in love with her, and I think that every like alternative little bean can kind of relate to when we saw Tiffany. She was like the shit. She was like a bad fucking bitch. You know what I mean? Jennifer Tilly, oh my god, I love the way she sounds, the way she looks, her makeup at the time, the eyebrow thing was like, we were all about super thin eyebrows. It's never really been a look for me, but at the time it was like really cool. You know what I mean? So that was one of the reasons that I was really into her or into Child's Play 2. Then I went back and rewatched Child's Play 1 as I got a little bit, well, I had watched it, but I went back and rewatched 1 as I got older, and that's when the other ones were coming out and they were things that existed. But again, I don't really think Child's Play was ever meant to be taken too seriously. I never saw the remake. I tend to not touch a lot of remakes unless I really trust what they're doing, like with Evil Dead or Candyman, even though Candyman, spoilers if you haven't seen the new Candyman, it's not a remake, it's more of a sequel. But a little of column A, a little of column B, if you know the Candyman lore, you know exactly why that is. But really love, like I really try to not touch a lot of remakes. Did see the Carrie remake. I don't think it was bad, but I would never, and I'm very rarely somebody who doesn't give remakes a chance, but I just don't think that the Carrie remake was all that good compared to the original, and I didn't want to ruin Child's Play in the same way. And, anyways, I like the way that it was done. I don't think Child's Play was ever meant to be taken super seriously. It was kind of funny. It was really campy, and this came after, like, we have these big waves in society of horror when we really, really like certain things as a whole, like the Paranormal Activity moments, when things are like haunted and possessed. That was like the more recent one. Early 2000s were like vampires. Obviously, we had like the zombie wave, things like that. So I don't really think that everything needs to really be touched on, but Child's Play was one of those moments where it was like I feel they were very aware that they knew it, like, a doll can't really be that scary, but he was like still a very angry soul, whatever. I don't look too deep in it. I just think it's good and funny, and I really like Tiffany, and that's most of why I like it. Especially because when you consider some of my other favorite flicks, Child's Play is rather like PG-13. And nowadays, and considering now standards to like gore and what they're showing, and I don't really think that gore constitutes a good horror movie. And when I say I like horror, a lot of people will say, "Oh, you like gore," and I do like gore. But I don't think a gratuitous amount of gore makes a good movie, and I don't watch them just because I'm into like snuff films or some shit. I don't. I just like it when I know it's practical effects, when it's done well, things like, iconic scenes like in Jeepers Creepers and things like that. Just things, and maybe like House of a Thousand Corpses is another one that they handled pretty well for the amount of gore that's in it. I think it was done phenomenally. I don't think like later Saw franchises, obviously again became self-aware of what they were, and they're like, all right, well, we'll feed into it, but in the beginning it was a little different. My favorite scene from Saw, and I know Saw's not on this list, but my favorite scene from Saw was when the girl, I think it was Saw 2, it might have been Saw 2, um, she puts her arm into a vat of syringes, and she pulls her arm out, and the syringes are obviously all over her arm. And that was something I, again, probably saw it way too young, but it was one of those moments where I was like, holy shit, that's fucking crazy. Like, I hate this. I am like skeeved out. You know what I mean? But I really enjoyed it at the same time, which is something like pretty interesting about the human psyche. Is like, this is fucking sick and terrible and awful, but I love it. But you know, I think Child's Play falls into a similar category of these films that are pretty well done. They're not too campy, like they're not B grade, but they're not like the best cinema you could get. But you know what you're getting. Moving from there, I can talk about Candyman. Candyman, the remake was really, really good. It was fucking phenomenal, actually. Or the second one. It was, I was kind of blown away, and maybe I didn't have such high expectations for the remake because Candyman, again, Candyman wasn't something that scared me, but the concept of it was always very, very cool. And again, score really, really good. It was always You Helen was one of the first songs I learned on piano. But Candyman was one of those films that I think most of Black America, it might be one of the only horror films that a lot of Black Americans, like got into horror for, or more so when we watch it versus when other people watch it. It's kind of like Candyman's not really a bad guy. You know what I mean? That's how I feel about it. Even with the second one, again, I don't think Candyman is a bad guy, especially with the new one that just came out. I don't think that he is in any way the villain in this story. Obviously, if you've seen the second one, it's like big spoilers. Maybe I'll put a timestamp, probably not because I'm very lazy. But spoilers, if you've seen the second one, it's like this big statement, much like the first one touches on. Second one is this big statement on gentrification, and it's actually fucking amazing how they follow this artist and kind of his descent into the Candyman case until he eventually becomes Candyman. It's really, really good. And it mirrors the first one in a lot of ways, but it also brings so much more to the table. And the first one, just to me one of those classics. That's something I think everybody should see. Obviously it's a play on like the Bloody Mary urban myth, but I do think if you haven't seen it you should. I don't really want to spoil that, and I won't spoil a lot of other aspects of the second one, just because when the case unfolds, obviously both of them follow people who are getting like walked down this case of the original Candyman, and then they learn like all of these other things, and it's just really good. And the imagery, I mean, like, a giant man with a trench coat with a hook for a hand it's scary, it's intimidating to people. If they're white and it's a black man, it's scary, it's intimidating to people. They comment on police brutality at a time that when that movie came out, obviously police brutality has been an issue in the United States for a long, 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 long time. But they commentated on it a little bit more egregiously, I think, than anybody had done at the time. Or at least, to the best of my knowledge, I wouldn't really know because I wasn't alive when the original Candyman came out. But it's one of those classics. We showed it to my friend's little sister, and she was fucking terrified. And we, of course, tried to do that thing that big kids do when they're trying to scare little kids, and we start to repeat it, and she's like losing her mind over it. And it was very, very funny because we were assholes when we were in 7th or 8th grade, but it was good, and we were a little bit scared too. It's not like we were just like hee hee hee, but it was very reminiscent of a scene in Candyman. They also touch a lot on mental health in those movies, and I think when a movie has that psychological aspect to it, it does make it a little bit more scary, which may be why something like The Blair Witch, which isn't on this list because it scares me and I don't watch it. These movies are I picked this 3 by 3 based on things that I like to watch during Halloween time, not things that stress me out. If somebody like and again, I like to make movie watching, kind of an experience. So if the TV is like too small or if the sound quality isn't good or something, I can't really enjoy whatever I'm watching in very few instances. Like when I saw Train to Busan, that I watched on a computer, but the film itself was so good that I didn't really mind. Whereas now it's like, if you're gonna put on Blair Witch Project or something like that, I'm probably gonna check out. If the experience isn't like, if we were to like rent out a movie theater or have like a big TV with like surround sound, then I will watch it. But other than that, I'm like, this kind of freaks me out too much to feel like being involved. Also, I did not include kind of any Eastern horror films, just because I kind of consider Eastern and Western horror. Obviously, horror is a very cultural thing, and a lot of people don't know, like, what is scary to us is not going to be scary to everyone in the world, and what is scary to other parts of the world will not be scary to us. And so I didn't include any Eastern films, even though I kind of greatly prefer Eastern horror from a filmmaking and cinematic point of view, and really storytelling point of view. I usually prefer Eastern films, but I did pick mostly Western classics for this, just because I don't really compare the two. And a lot of these movies do have a nostalgia aspect for me that I didn't really get with Eastern films until I was maybe like 13 or 14. Just because, like, when I was 13, maybe that's when you discovered, there was another version of The Grudge. The original version was Japanese. There was another version of One Missed Call. The original version was Japanese. Train to Busan. I don't consider Train to Busan a horror, but it is a zombie movie. I consider it a suspense film, and I don't know what real critics mark it down as, but again, Train to Busan, Korean. I'm talking about this episode of Squid, or I'm on this episode of Squid Game is phenomenal, and I just think the way Eastern storytelling and direction and cinematography is a little bit different than what we have, and I appreciate them in a different capacity, and I don't think it's fair to really compare the two, just because these are Western classics, you know what I mean? So there's that. If there was a jump cut, I just got a call from my mom. Anyways, so yeah, I just don't consider them because they're all kind of classics in their own right and they're kind of a league of their own. But if you want an Eastern horror episode, please let me know and I will do that. Or maybe we'll add a little like thing at the end of the last episode. The last episode of this month will be a little bit longer because it will be Hollow Weekend and I just think it deserves a special. So I could touch on Eastern horror. Maybe I just answered my own question, but I like the satisfaction of you messaging me and commenting and things like that. And it also boosts it in the algorithm, especially if you're watching this on YouTube. We're trying really, really hard to get monetized on Anchor and Spotify, and if I have 50 listeners, I can get it. But I know people prefer YouTube, so I have it on YouTube. But if you feel like commenting and liking and stuff, I would really appreciate it. Anyways, so next up, I have Carrie. Again, Carrie is one of those films that very nostalgic to my heart. I can tell you it was that same week that I saw Nightmare on Elm Street and Carrie fucking terrified me because I did not follow the whole movie because I was like 6 and that imagery of her just drenched in blood fucking traumatized me. And I was a bullied kid, so that was one of those things that I was genuinely scared of happening to me, and I was scared of religion because of this movie, and I was like, Mom, you went to a Catholic school, are you gonna be like this mom? And she was like, no, that's not real. And then like the only jump scare in the movie was like when her hand came up from the house and like grabbed her arm. And Carrie's just really good. It's super fucking iconic. The remake was subpar, but you know, the acting in it, the writing in it was good. I just, compared to the original, I think the original holds up much better than some of the other older films on this list. Carrie just means a lot to me, and it really is just good horror in my opinion. And again, I think those elements of religion, in similar ways to why I have Exorcist on here, those elements of religion stresses a lot of people out, and I am not necessarily scared of traditional Christian religions or Neolithic or whatever. That's not the word. Anyways, I'm not scared of. Speaking of which, I got made fun of for the one word I didn't know, but at least I admit, on the last episode, at least I admit that I don't know it. And viewer retention is really, really not that great. So by the end of this, I know that Scott, you will make fun of me for saying Neolithic because I know you know the word that I'm looking for. Anyway, anyways, after that, I have Get Out. Again, that's a more of a modern classic. Get Out. I think it's interesting I included Candyman and Get Out on here, and Get Out is obviously something I just learned my mom never even saw Get Out, but Get Out is a film that, you know, anybody who's black and has white friends or a white partner or even like if you're lower class or middle class and your partner is upper class and they're in close proximity to white America, that's a valid fear. I don't care what anybody says. Get Out stressed me the fuck out while I was watching it. And it's just really good. Cinematography is amazing. Get Out had me interested in Jordan Peele as a director and writer. Us solidified it. And I think having and he is a mixed man, but he's African American at the end of the day. And having a black creator and black creators similarly to all of the things coming out currently, I think having black creators in the horror space is absolutely phenomenal. Speaking of black creators, if you're looking for one, Zero Gravity, I will have their information in the Discord. She is super duper talented, amazing. She does horror year round. Go check her out. She does reviews on current horror movies, and she's just really good. Just, that's totally unrelated. Lastly, touching on Dread. Dread is, I believe it's an indie film, but it touches on psychological aspects while being very visceral and in your face about certain fears. I don't want to spoil it because I would love you to watch it, but all you need to know is they lock a vegan in a room with meat and they expose a girl's birthmark to the entire school. It's really good. It's about a filmmaker trying to interview people on their fears and make a documentary, and it is something that, again, it's not such a suspense horror, but it is psychological, and I do think you get secondhand fear for these people, and it does leave you on the edge of your seat. It's really, really good. But like I said, this episode will be a little bit shorter, and sorry that it's a little bit rushed towards the end, but I promise the next few episodes will not be. I hope that you enjoyed them just the same, and I hope that you can comment or message me, or please go on Anchor and send me a voice message about your top horror, top 3, unless you can just name your top 9 and not make it a half-hour long excursion on what your top 9 is, but please, please, please reach out to me. Let me know how you like this episode. This has been the Idle Screen Podcast. I'm Legend of Anakin. Thank you for listening. Live like legends, and I will hear you, talk to you, see you next week. Have an amazing week, and happy first day of Halloween, guys.